Iraq's history. In the beginning, there was Sumer, way back some 6,000 years ago, that saw the dawn of history and the invention of writing. The skills of Sumerian arts and crafts, displayed today in the Iraq Museum and elsewhere, gives but a glimpse into what must have been a rich and varied culture. Sumerian records, inscribed in clay, tell of techniques, transactions and work procedures for the textile industry, which was centered on religion. One type of garment seems to have dominated Sumerian fashions, the konakis, a wide ribbon wound round the body, covering the left shoulder and arm, leaving the right arm and shoulder free and hanging loose over the chest. The Sumerians have inspired several of the Da's creations, and the graphic richness of the standard of Ur is an obvious example. Picturing scenes of war and peace on the sides of what is thought to be a box for a musical instrument, the standard is perhaps the best known find from the royal cemetery of the Sumerian city of Ur. Sumerian konakis continued to influence succeeding civilizations in ancient Iraq until the emergence of the city of Babylon as the dominant force, about the 2nd millennium before the birth of Christ. The Babylonians, who left us a city to ponder, the legacy of Hammurabi's code of law and the splendor of Nebuchadnezzar, had the wealth and the creative skills to innovate. They introduced a short tunic in linen, wool or cotton, worn with an overgarment which took various forms, such as a kaftan or a cape. The ladies of the Babylonian court must have looked elegant, if not always secure, because at the beginning of the 1st millennium before the birth of Christ, the thundering hooves of the Assyrians began to be heard from the north. Purposeful and vigorous, the Assyrians, who lived and dominated the northern part of the country, began to push south and outwards. Their proud and warlike character carved out on the walls of Nineveh, Ashur, Nimrod, Khorsbad and their other cities. Paradoxically, a civilization known through the exploits of its conquering soldiers should also leave clear evidence of scholarship and learning and aesthetic sensitivity in the visual arts. An emphasis on the decorative element seems to characterize Assyrian costumes. They were richly ornamented with geometric motifs, dominated by the sacred symbol of the Tree of Life. Wall friezes provided this tableau of a royal procession. They also inspired several of the Da's designs. In the tapestry of ancient sites that litter the Iraqi landscape, none is stranger and more impressive than the remains of the City of the Sun. Hatra, capital of the Arab kingdom of Arabia, that rose to prominence a century before the birth of Christ, and continued to straddle and influence the trade route between the Gulf and the Mediterranean for almost 300 years. The Arabs of Hatra, who fortified a city that withstood the legions of Rome, left us evidence of a mode of dress that continued the Iraqi tradition of ornamentation and heavy embroidery in a style distinctly their own. Dar al-Azhar has created a modern version of the costume of the Hatran princess Dashfari. So the story continues. At the beginning of the 7th century AD, this generous land answered a call that rose from the Arabian Peninsula. Soon Islam spread throughout Mesopotamia, and the fulcrum of creative dynamism moved back to Iraq, where conditions were once again ripe for the flowering of yet another civilization. Basra, Kufa, Wazit, new cities that rose by the ruins of Ur, Babylon and Nippur. Soon the Muslims found themselves with an empire that stretched from China in the east to the Pyrenees in Europe, paying homage to and seeking guidance from the capital in Iraq. That capital was soon to be Baghdad. Born in 762 to the Khalifa al-Mansur and destined to witness the golden age of Islam. Artisans and artists, scientists and thinkers flocked from all corners of the 8th century world to the famed City of Peace. It was an age of culture and elegance, an age of reflection and creative thought. The Islamic era was undoubtedly Iraq's richest cultural period. Islam exercised a profound influence over art. A distinct architectural style and a repertory of abstract motifs based on geometry and plants soon evolved, creating unity in art that is one of the cohesive forces that characterizes Islam. Another factor is the unifying effect of Arabic, in which the Holy Quran was revealed. Muslim artists developed the art of Arabic calligraphy to an unrivaled degree. The Abbasids, who ruled Iraq and the vast Muslim empire from Baghdad and their second capital, Samarra, whose great mosque dominated the city, presided over a prosperous and vigorous society. Such was the heritage that inspired a major part of Dar al-Azhar's work. In Iraqi literature, Dar al-Azia have found other sources of inspiration. From the Epic of Gilgamesh, man's first heroic story, to more recent Arabic poetry and verse, the field is rich and varied. Not unnaturally, illustrated literature caught the imagination of the Dar's designers. None more so than the work of the 13th century Iraqi illustrator Yahya al-Wasiti, known principally for his illustrations of the maqamat or assemblies of al-Hariri, a major literary work of 12th century Iraq. The author, al-Hariri, who was born in Basra in 1054 and died in 1122, wrote 50 maqamas or episodes. Several of his manuscripts survived, the best of which is this work in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, which was illustrated by al-Wasiti. The artist's attention to the details of life in 13th century Iraq in this dramatic, though one-dimensional style, provided Dar al-Azia with a stylistic raw material from which designs for today have been fashioned.
القماش الأخضر مثل ما طلبتي هذا اللون الأخضر.
ممكن تمزجين هاللونين ببعض القضايا وتظلليه بالخيط كلها تطريز بالخيط.
At Dar al-Azia's premises in Baghdad is a highly integrated operation where all the processes of fashion creation are carried out. Members of the establishment, be they the Director General who founded the Dar, seamstresses or show organizing personnel and models, are conscious of the responsibility they bear as the prime source of ideas and influences that shape Iraqi fashions. The Dar cooperates with the country's textile manufacturers and coordinates styles and ideas with ready-to-wear garment makers. The Dar also helps in designing uniforms for schools and other organizations, and its educational role will be further enhanced when its plans for a reference library and specialized publications are completed. Dar al-Azia does not disappoint popular expectations when it presents a tableau that evokes the 1001 Nights. The costumes are a true representation of those common in the palaces of 8th century Baghdad. Most of the material that the Dar uses will have been the product of vast machines in vast factories up and down the country. The designers, therefore, take pleasure in contemplating and using the products of the traditional weaver. Many of these craftsmen and their tools have been found and saved from oblivion through a program initiated by the Ministry of Culture. Not just a quaint and academic curiosity, not just a reminder, an echo of earlier times, but active production units that provide the material that allow organizations such as Dar al-Azia to shape fashions for today. Fashions for today, of today, that have the unmistakable feel of folklore and tradition. To speak of tradition and folklore in Iraqi fashions leads invariably to the one type that dominates in its various styles both town and country. The Hashimi, worn traditionally in central and southern Iraq, has provided the Dar with one of its most prolific design concepts and influenced fashion designers in Europe and elsewhere. Designs in two basic styles have been produced. Traditional Hashimi, reflecting a faithful rendition of this richly embroidered overgarment with matching headdress, and modern Hashimi, a free interpretation of traditional styles in brighter colors.
Okay, towards me a bit. This way.
It is easy to see Dar al-Azia's fashion show as a travelling trailer for a story 6,000 years long. But the interest that the Dar's designs and presentation generate wherever it sets its stage is unmistakable. These young Iraqis may be forgiven a touch of pride in what they do, for consciously or not, they are ambassadors for a culture that has just awakened from one of its periodic hibernations and is anxious to reach out and contribute once again to the story of man. They are also aware, as their Director General emphasizes, that in the past 10 years, Dar al-Azia's output, great as it may seem, has but scratched the surface of the rich vein that stretches through this generous and ancient land. Not unnaturally, the inheritors of the legacy of such leaders as Gilgamesh, Hammurabi, Ashurbanipal, Nebuchadnezzar, and Harun al-Rashid have reason to be proud of their day, for they live the hopes and aspirations of their Arab Renaissance revolution under the leadership of President Saddam Hussein.